Hello everybody. Oh, hang on. Right, you can hear me now. Hopefully you can hear me now. Hello everybody, welcome to this Highlight Crafts Zoom workshop. Very excited to be bringing this to you today. I don't know who's on the call with us today. I'm going to be just kind of rocking on through this, so if you've got any questions, just pop them in the question bar, in the chat bar, and we'll get them answered for you. We're going to be about an hour. Hopefully we might be a little bit more, but don't worry, we're going to record it for you. As soon as it's over, we'll send you off the link so you can watch it back as many times as you want to. Okay, and it will also be on YouTube for you in the next couple of days. So don't worry about that. If you miss anything, or if you have to nip off, or you can't be with us for the full hour. But please do ask as many questions. I'm sat in this lovely room on my own. I've got Andrew in my ear, who I'm going to be chatting to as well, and hopefully chatting to you guys as well. So I don't know about you. This is my first Zoom workshop for Highlight Crafts. I've done obviously many shows for them with the Lemon Lane products at Create and Craft. I should probably introduce myself properly. I'm Becky Cole, and yeah, I tend to put my teeth back in. Bodes well, doesn't it? Can't talk already, and we're 5 minutes in. Yeah, so I represent the Lemon Lane side of Highlight Crafts through Create and Craft and at various events like the Crafting Live events and so on and so forth. I've been soft crafting since I was 7, which is a really, really long time ago. So I hopefully know what I'm talking about. So I think today you're all here to see me working with the Elegance collection, which is a set of cushions. I've got them behind me. I've also got the bag that I made for the show when we launched these on Create and Craft. But if I move my head, you can see we've got the hummingbirds and vines. We've got the butterfly and poppies. And over there is the pretty pansies. So that's the 3 cushion covers in the collection. And that's what we're going to be working with today. So my aim is to kind of just show you how to put together a cushion cover, because it's a great project for starters. If you've never sewn before, it's a brilliant first project, but also it's something that's very quick and easy and can absolutely change the look of a room for very, very little money. You're not having to redecorate the whole room. Just a couple of different cushion covers can really, really change the whole look of it. So I have got a panel here just to kind of show you what the panels look like. Hopefully you've all got them with you. You don't need to worry about kind of working alongside me. You can watch this back as many times as you want. But this, I'm going to hold it up. I'll disappear. Look, there's your panel. It's huge. So you've got your cushion front. Let me lie it down and then you can see from above. This is the cushion front that you get. Okay, there's your front, and it's clearly marked with a line for you to cut it out. Now, I love this collection because to me, we do the cozy quilts, we do those faux quilts, but to me, this is faux embroidery. So this is something else that we can be doing. You don't need to be good at embroidery. You can use these and it looks like you created these beautiful embroidery images, but you can also embroider into these, free motion into them, hand embroider into them. You can stitch beads and anything to kind of, embellish them if you want to. It's almost a bit like an embroidery kit if that's what you want to do with it. You then have this huge expanse of backing fabric. Now you can use this part for whatever you want. It's obviously included in the panel for you to be able to create your backs, and that's what we're going to be doing today. But there's all sorts of things you could be doing with this. You could use an alternative fabric and use this to make 3 cushions. So you've got 2 with this on the front and 1 with the main on the front. You can make bags out of these. You can do all kinds of things. So these are very versatile. They don't have to just be cushions. But however, it is a make your own cushion kit. So this is what we're going to be working on today. I'm going to show you 3 different cushion backs, an easy peasy one, a intermediate one, and a sort of more challenging one. So depending on your ability, how confident you are in the sewing machine, there will be something for everybody, hopefully. There are obviously other options. I'm going to be doing an envelope fold. I'm going to be doing a zip cushion, and I'm going to be doing a button close cushion back. However, you can do things like Velcro. You can do all kinds of different things. You can do lace up backs. You can do whatever you want. But these are just probably the 3 most common types of cushion back that you're going to get. So I want to show you all 3 of those, and then you can pick and choose what you want to do. So hopefully, if everybody's ready, we can make a start. It's very weird being in here on my own, knowing I'm talking to people, but no one's talking back. Andrew's here. Andrew's singing in my ear. Right. So the first cushion I'm going to be looking at is the hummingbird vines, and we're going to start with the simplest, which is the envelope fold. So here's our cushion front. You can see there. I've cut it out around the black line. Now this will give you a cushion panel. This gives you, this is a 17-inch cushion front. So you can either use a 16-inch cushion or an 18-inch cushion pad with these. 16-inch will be slightly smaller. Also, don't forget you've got your seam allowance, so it's not going to be finished at 17 inches. It's just going to be probably 16 and a half. So a 16 will be, we'll fill it nicely, but it will be quite soft. If you want to put an 18-inch into here, it's going to be one of those really sort of lovely plump cushions where the pad's like trying to fight to get out. So really up to you how you like your cushions, totally up to you. But this fabric is brilliant for cushions because it just holds its own weight. I mean, you've got these at home in front of you, hopefully. You can feel the quality and the weight of this fabric. So I've got my fronts. Now out of the backing fabric panel, I have cut 2 pieces. So as you can see, they're bigger than half. So this is about half. It doesn't have to be an exact science. I don't, there are times and places to be really precise. This isn't one of them. I try and do things as imprecisely as possible, if I can get away with it. Anyway, so as you can see, I've cut this slightly bigger than half, and I've done 2 of those. So I've got a second one, and as you can see, as I lay them over, they overlap. So my middle is here. So this is my overlap. So I've got a nice big overlap, and that's going to secure my cushion in there. It's important to just add, if you are going to use an 18-inch cushion pad with these, you might want to just be aware that you might want a slightly bigger overlap in the back, because if the cushion is fighting to get out, what can happen with an envelope fold is it sort of does this. So the bigger the overlap, the more support the cushion pad has inside. If you're using a 16-inch cushion pad, you're not necessarily going to need such a big overlap, but it's kind of up to you. Now, it's important to add as well that there is leftover fabric having done this. This probably uses the most fabric of all 3 options, but you've still got quite a nice amount of fabric left over from that back panel piece, so you can use it to make maybe some little coasters or something, something else to use that fabric for. So I've got my 2 pieces. This is what I'm going to use first of all. So let's just pop our front over to the side. I'm going to come to my sewing machine. Now these do have a directional pattern, so I'm just going to make sure that I've got my directional pattern going the same way. Can you see that my birds' heads are all that way? Originally I had it this way, so I had these birds going that way and these birds going this way. That's fine if that's the look you want to go for, but I want to keep my direction the same so that all of the birds' heads are facing in the same direction. So I want to hem these 2 edges so when they meet in the middle, and I'm going to just do like a very small roll hem. I'll show you how to do those. Okay, so I'll show you on the overhead. Let's show you on the overhead. Right, so I'm going to turn it over just about 1/4 of an inch. Oh, look, Andrew's zooming in. He's good, isn't he? I'm going to turn it over just about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to turn it over again. Okay, now you can do that and pop some pins in or some clips if you prefer to use clips. And so then, if that's what you want to do. I like to go rogue and I tend to sew it on the machine, but that's because the machine holds it securely in place, and I can use the tension of the machine to help me get a crisp fold. So it's completely up to you, but if you don't feel overly confident, give that a pin or a clip if you prefer to use clips, because obviously this is quite thick fabric, so clips work really well with it. Right, now I'm coming to the machine. So I've got my 1/4 inch roll hem, and I'm just going to do a little edge stitch. So an edge stitch is where you stitch right up close to the edge of your seam. Just going to reverse stitch a little bit just to secure the stitch. Because this fabric's got such a lovely weight to it, as I'm folding it, I can kind of press it with my fingers, and it just folds beautifully. It's sort of so crisp, it takes that fold. So I'm just rubbing it with my finger, and that is giving it a quick press and holding that roll. Right, there we go, just a quick reverse stitch at the end. There we go. So if I lie that down, so now you can see this is my stitch. I'm just using a white thread, so it's fairly invisible. If I turn it over, so you can see the roll, and you can also see what I mean by an edge stitch. I know it's white on white, but can you see how closely to that edge I've stitched? So really, really nice and neat and close. So there's my one. Now I need to do the same on this side here. Oh, I'm losing Andrew out of my ear. Bear with me. Don't go, there he is. Right, so I'm going to start this top edge and do exactly the same thing. So I'm rolling my hem on this side, so I want to make sure it's this edge here. Okay, back under the machine, and exactly the same process. Now, with this fabric, because it's nice and thick, you want to be using a nice sturdy needle. So I would say a 14 or a 16. That's what I would use, just because they've got a little bit more strength. Or a denim needle would work, because it's similar to a denim weight. A jersey needle wouldn't be any good, because that's quite a blunt needle. If anything is too, if you go for a microtex or a thinner needle, sort of your 8, 10s or 12s, it might be that there's not quite enough strength in the needle to deal with the layers of fabric. So I would go for a stronger needle. Right, done that. So now I've got my 2 rolled hems. Okay, so if I turn this one over, you can see this one and this one. So that's what they now look like. Now, if you want to be really clever, you can do some pattern matching. I don't even know if I've pattern matched this, then it is completely a fluke. But do you see what I'm doing here? I'm just matching up where the patterns cross, so it looks like it's one continuous piece of fabric. Let's just measure it. Oh my goodness, we could get away with that. I'm that good. I have managed to pattern match completely by accident. Right, what I'm going to do, because I'm quite pleased with myself. I'm feeling quite smug that I've done that. So I'm going to just pop some pins to hold my birds in place. You don't have to do this step if you haven't pattern matched. Oh, do you know, when I'm deliberately trying to pattern match, it takes me hours of fiddling around and getting it wrong and fiddling around and getting wrong. And I've done it and it's just worked out exactly. That's so funny. So funny. Right, one other one in this little birdie here. Right, so now I know that my back matches perfectly. Can you see how it, just the pattern, look, although you can see this, the pattern itself isn't broken up. Pattern matching is worth the effort, I have to say. Right, so now I'm going to, I've pinned those 2 layers together, okay? And now I'm going to take my front and I'm going to lie that over the top. And we're going to be doing it right sides together. Okay, I can't believe I've done that. I'm so pleased. Oh dear, I love it when a plan comes together. Right, so when you're laying these out, what you want to make sure is what direction do you want your birds and your fold to go across. Do you want it, if you're looking at the cushion, so this is the direction of the cushion, do you want your envelope fold to go horizontally or do you want it to run vertically? And this is kind of up to you, depending on the birds here. Obviously, if I have this running vertically, it means that my birds are going to be sort of sideways across. But because they're hummingbirds, they kind of sit sideways anyway, so it would still work. However, if I wanted to have them all that way, which I can do, you see, now, and then that way, I have my envelope fold running horizontally. Okay, Andrew likes this way, so we're going with this way. Got to keep Andrew sweet, he's got the cameras. Right, so make sure that your cushion front panel is up the right way, and that so the direction is correct. And just lay on top. Now I am going to use my little clips because they are a bit easier on the old fingers. And I'm just going to clip all the way around. Now I'm going to show you how to sew the cushion together, but this is the same process for all three finishes. So whether or not you are doing an envelope fold, a zip, or buttons, how you actually attach the fronts and the backs together are pretty similar. You'll see it, but it's fairly straightforward. What would be easier if I just got a handful and brought them to the table, wouldn't it? So I'm going to pop these on. So in places, the seam allowance is slightly bigger. So for example, here, can you see where it's just sticking out? Now you could just trim this off if you wanted to. I'm just going to follow the line of the top part. It's not going to make a huge big difference. If you were dressmaking, and the difference between sizes when you're dressmaking can be millimeters, so it can make a big difference. But for something like a cushion cover, this is why it makes such a good first project. Because you don't have to be precise. It's all straight lines. It's super easy. So again here, see where it's just sticking out? Now I could tweak this and change where my overlap is, but then I'd lose my beautiful by accident pattern matching. So I'm not going to do that. Right. So now I'm going to bring this back to the machine, and what I'm going to do is just stitch all the way around. Now normally when we're doing things like this we have to leave a gap and turn it through, which is called bagging out. However, with these we don't have to do it because this is our gap. This is how we're going to turn it through. So I'm going to go all the way around all four edges, okay? And I'm going to do I'm going to say a centimetre, which is 3/5 of an eighth. 3/8 of an inch. Oh dear. Bear with me, guys, all the way around, because I think that's a decent seam allowance, and you want to have a nice secure amount of seam allowance as well. You don't want these seams to be coming undone. Now, where I've started sewing, here, you won't be able to see it at home, or you can just about see it, there's a ridge here. This is my overlap. Now, through personal experience, I find that envelope folds are also one of the weaker cushion backs. They can tear quite easily if you're trying to force cushions in, or over time they can sort of come apart. So what I would recommend doing is when you get to these little lumps where there's the overlap, just go back 2 or 3 times just over that little ridge. There's another one, so I'm just going to go backwards and forwards, and all that's going to do is just give those overlaps a little bit of strength. I'll show you when we open it up what I mean, because those parts are going to have the most pressure on them, should we say. Right, when I get to a corner, I'm going to leave my needle in, I'm going to lift my foot, and I'm going to pivot my fabric around, and then so I can just carry on, and that's going to give me a really nice crisp corner. And as I said, I'm following the top part of the cushion patterns, the top fabric. I'm ignoring that lip at the bottom. All the way up. So there's no overlap edges there, because that's one of the sides, one of the top rather, because we've got our thing going horizontally. Now I'm using the machine foot to measure my 1 centimetre seam allowance. If you want to draw it on there, by all means. There's another fold, and there's another bit there. So let's go backwards and forwards. But I've learnt what a centimetre is, where the position on my sewing machine is, so I just use my foot as a guide. But like I said, because of what we're making, it doesn't even have to be precise. You want to try and keep your seam allowances as kind of even and the same as you can, but it isn't going to cause big problems for your project if your seam allowances aren't exactly spot on all the way around. Andrew's giving me a time count and he's frightening me by just saying the time. And I just thought, is that how, have we only got 20 minutes left? We haven't. Did a flicker of panic cross my face? Right. Okay, so I've gone all the way around and you can see on the back side where my overlaps are. So there's one here and there's one here that I've gone over 2 or 3 times. So it's this point, these points here and these points here that I've done that. Okay, right, so I'm just going to grab these pins out that were holding my incredible pattern matching together. That won't ever happen again, by the way, ever. Don't expect any of the other cushion cover panels to be pattern matched. Right, now when you're turning this through, you've got 2 options. You can trim away the corners, which will get rid of your excess and helps relieve the bulk in the corners. However, because this is a soft furnishing piece, there's going to be some pressure on these corners. Same with bags. It's quite nice to actually do the folding method. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to get my thumb right inside that corner, okay? And I'm going to fold and fold. Don't worry, I'm going to do 4 of these. So if you didn't catch that, I'm going to do, to be fair, I'm going to do 12, aren't I? Because I've got 3 cushions to make. Okay, and then you push it through, give it a little push, and you can get your pin or your chopstick or whatever it is you use to pull out the corners. You can use that to push it through even more. Now you're nice and close, I'll show you again. So my thumb is right in the corner. I'm folding one side under my thumb, and then I'm folding the other side under my thumb, gripping it between my thumb and finger and pushing that through. And there's my corner. So this would mean that I've just blown Andrew's mind. This will mean that your corners are nice and sharp, but also they've just got a little bit of strength behind them. So there's corner number 3. And whoop, slipped. Corner number 4. So now I can just grab the corners, give them a pull. Okay. Give my overlap at the back a bit of a smooth so that it sits flat. You know, like on your pillowcases at home, that kind of weird flap bit that you tuck your pillow under, trying to iron those. It's a bit like that, sort of trying to get it flat. And there we go. So there's our cushion front. Beautiful. I love the hummingbird. And there is our matchy cushion. Now this is why I said about doing that reinforcing stitching at these points, because when you put your cushion in, that is where the pressure is. Okay? And the same as when you're getting the inside, that is where your pressure is. Now that extra, if you don't do that extra sewing, take it from me, eventually you can end up tearing these 2 joints. It's very easy to stitch them back together again, but if you can avoid it in the first place anyway, why not? So there is our first cushion cover, our envelope fold. Marvellous. Right, so we're just going to carry straight on. I'm just going to have a swig of water because, you know, talking to yourself for an hour. I know I'm not, I'm talking to you guys, but it feels like a fairly one-way conversation. So yeah, please do ask any questions, you know, if I'm not explaining something or if you've got something that you want to know about, even if it's not even to do with the cushions, let's just have a chat. Yeah, Andrew will tell me in my ear what your question is and I will do my best to answer them. Right, okay, so cushion number 2. We're going for a zip front cushion now. Now these are, I think, one of the best options because it's the most discreet, it's the neatest. My cushions at home are zipped fronts. It means you can still open them up, get the cushion pad out for washing, etc. But in the meantime, you've got a nice secure cushion pad. And also it uses the least fabric because all you need is your front panel, so your front square, and exactly the same size in the back. So you know we had that overlap before, so we had that excess fabric. So with this, you've got a lot more fabric left over. So really depends on what it is that you want to do with your fabric really, and what your skill level is. So I would class this as the intermediate cushion cover. None of them are overly taxing. Honestly, anybody can have a go at any of them. I just think the button one is a bit more involved. There's a few more steps to it. So if you're brand new, it might feel a little bit too much. Right, so I've got my zip. And it is an invisible zip. You don't have to use an invisible zip. I'm just going to do something very quickly, which is stitch over the bottom, because I realised I'm recycling a zip because, you know, it's good for the environment. And I had one to hand that was perfect. So I'm just going to stitch over the bottom because this zip has been cut and it has no stopper. So if I don't consciously take care, I'll open it and the zipper will go straight off the end. And then that'll be the end of the demo because we won't have a zip. So I've just stitched across the bottom just to make sure that the pull doesn't run off the end there, because I've done that before. It's really annoying. So again, it's white on white. I apologise, but this is the reality of what you'd be doing at home is you'd be colour matching your things. You could pick out one of the colours in a zip. That might be quite nice. If you wanted to pick out, you know, the colours of the flowers, the yellow or a little purple or something. I'm going to change my machine foot very quickly. And I'm going to change it to, you can use an invisible zipper foot, which I do have, but I'm actually going to change it to my piping foot, just because it gives me a little bit of control on where I stitch. It doesn't matter if you're not, you know, with invisible zips, you kind of need to be exactly, you know, really close up. With a cushion cover, it doesn't matter so much. It really depends on what you want. But to be fair, you can use a normal zip. It doesn't have to be an invisible zip as well. It can be whatever you want. Right, so let's lower that down. So this is how I set up my piping foot, is I lower the needle in. The piping foot has these little notches. I don't know if you can see them at home. These little notches in the side. And I want my needle to sit just right on the edge of that, so that when I'm stitching, the foot is kind of helping me to hold the fabric out of the way, which is why it's the piping foot, because it's so good for piping. Right, so I'm going to open up my invisible zip. I'm still going to be a bit cautious with that end, even though I've stitched it. I'm still going to be cautious. Now, with an invisible zip, I'm going to just give it a quick press. So I'm going to push open the coil. Just give it a little press open. That helps to get the stitches right into the crease, because with an invisible zip, that's sort of the aim, is to try and get the stitching. I'd be interested to know whether you call these invisible zips or concealed zips. There you go, you can put that in the chat for me, because I've always called them, sort of in between, but if somebody says to me a concealed zip, my first thought is one of these. And actually, if you go on certain websites to purchase them, they are sold as concealed zips. However, I have a friend who has asked me to make some clothes for her London fashion show in a few weeks' time. And she's written concealed zip, but she means hidden under a flap. It was very confusing. So I had this whole sort of conversation with her about what she meant by that. Okay, Kirsty's asked what size zip. So this one is slightly shorter than the cushion panel. You can use anything. I wouldn't go shorter than this. Let me grab my tape measure and I can tell you exactly, because this won't be a standard size because it's one that I'm recycling. So this is 38 centimetres, which is 15 inches. But you could go, so what did I say? 17.5 is about the width of the cushion cover. So you could go sort of, I would say between 15 and 17 inches is probably spot on. And like I say, you don't have to use an invisible zip. You can just use a regular zip. The process I'm using is the same. It's just a slightly different foot. Is my foot the zipper foot? No, this is a piping foot that I'm using. So the foot that's marked with an I, if you're using a Brother machine, you have a zipper foot. So there's the zipper foot that is marked with an I on the foot there. So that's what you would use to stitch your zipper. So if you're using a non-concealed zip, you would use, or invisible zip, the debate continues. If you are using a regular zip with a non-concealed coil, then you would use the I foot. I'm using the piping foot. I do have, I'm using a Brother machine. I do have the invisible zip foot, but I kind of fluctuate between the invisible zip foot and the piping foot, and depending on the project. I'm only using the piping foot because I'm using an invisible zip and I want to get really close up to the coil. Kirsty calls it an invisible zip. Good, excellent, thank you for clarifying. But if somebody said concealed zip to you, would you think of one of these or would you think of something else? This is the question. Oh, Andrew thinks it would be hidden under something. Oh, so you're like my friend. I'm not talking to you anymore, Andrew. He's justifying his opinion. A concealed something is something that's hidden, absolutely. But an invisible zip is a hidden... I don't know. To be fair, they're both correct. They are both correct. But I was on a website yesterday purchasing some and they had them down as invisible zips. So there you go. Right, so what I'm doing, let's tell you what I'm actually doing because that's kind of why we're here. I've placed the zip right sides down. Hang on, let me just check I'm doing it the right way. Yep, right. So I've placed the zip right sides together. So this is up looking at me and the zip is the right side down, okay? And I've just popped some parallel pins. I've put in these very thin parallel pins because I can then just stitch straight over them if I want to. And I'm going to stitch a line of stitching into this groove all the way along. Now there's going to be a point where we want to get to this part, which is quite bulky. So I'll show you what happens there. In fact, we're going to start at that end. So what I'm going to do actually, let's make this as easy as possible. If you're using a regular zip, what you do is you pull the stopper out of the way, like this, okay? And then you can get into here. So let's do that. Okay, Carol's asked if the piping foot comes with the FS180. It doesn't. It comes with the FS250 if you have that one, or I mean it's very easy to get hold of. All of the Brother feet are interchangeable, so so you're not. It's not a problem at all. Okay, right, so I'm going to run the thing with an invisible zip, what you've got to be careful is that you do not catch the coil. If you catch the coil with your thread, it will not go up and down, like you won't be able to move the pull. Right, so now I've just made a little start. Actually, let's come a little bit further. I'm going to lift up the foot and I'm going to pull. It's a little bit fiddly. It is a little bit fiddly and I'm aware my hands are all in the way. There we go. So you kind of want to negotiate the pull back past the needle, back to the back. So now I've just got tape to deal with. Okay. So now I'm using my foot and my nicely pressed open coil to get right in that groove. The closer you can get into that groove, so with an invisible zip, basically the coil sort of folds in on itself, whereas other ones are sort of just flat. These kind of fold back on themselves, and that's what makes it invisible. So we kind of press them open again. But the groove of that fold is where you want to get your stitch to make it as invisible as possible. Yeah, we can show you a close-up. Andrew's on the case. Right. There we go. Sorry, can you repeat the question, Andrew? Am I using a longer stitch length? I tend to use a length 3 as standard. I don't know why, I just like it. I just think it gives a really nice finish. You could use a 2.5. I wouldn't go more than a 3 for this because you know, we're not stitching through loads of fabrics. We've got wadding involved. So I'm just, yeah, and the longer the stitch, the weaker the stitch as well. So it's great if you're accommodating bulk within your project, like if you're quilting or something. But for something like this, if I use a really long stitch length, it means I've actually got fewer stitches holding my zip in place. So you want to try and use enough, you want enough stitches that we're not going to end up losing our zip. So basically I've now stitched my zip. So you can see that there's the coil. My line of stitching is right in there. Okay, there's the tape. So when you're doing a non-invisible zip, you probably would stitch about here, but with an invisible zip, you want to get right into there. So now I've got this half. Let's move my tape thingy out of the way. Right, so this is another point where we're going to decide the direction of our back. So I automatically put the zip on the bottom edge because I think then when you put your cushion down on your sofa, it's sitting on the zip, so it's not visible at all. That's just how I work. That's how I put my cushions at home. So this is the bottom. I've got my butterflies across the top. So with the back, I need to decide what's going to be the top. So I've got the butterflies here, but this is a little less directional. So what I'm going to do, on my front, let's have a look. Can you see that the purple pansy is at the top and these two are at the bottom? So I want the purple pansies to be at the top on my cushion back. I'm going to treat the pansies as the direction. So you can see the 3 butterflies there at the top. So we've got these other butterflies. This one isn't as directional as the other one. You can kind of get away with it a bit more. But that's the direction I want to pick so that it matches and echoes the front. Okay, so I've got my back in the right direction. There's my front the right direction. Let's put them right sides together. I move this up. Now I've stitched this one along here. Now what I'm going to do is stitch this tape to this part, but I need to make sure that I've lined up the edges because otherwise when I come to stitch my cushion together, if the zip does up and then it's sort of like that, you're in trouble. That's when the unpick has to come out, and nobody invited the unpicker to the party. That's what I say. I hate unpicking. Right, so I'm moving my zipper out of the way so that I can stitch this part, although we're going to be starting from this end. So I'm just going to move it out of the way just to get the tape lined up. I'm lining the tape up with the bottom. I'm making sure the corners are lined up. And I'm going to pop just a little pin just to hold it in place. I can move these pins, it doesn't matter. This is just literally to hold it in place. Actually, let's take the zipper pull all the way to the top. There we are. You can obviously pin this any way you want. You don't have to line it up with the bottom edge as long as it's level. So if you wanted a bit more of a seam allowance, you could do this. But I'm just lining it up with the bottom edge because I think it gives a nice accurate seam allowance. I know I'm keeping it even because it's just the width of my zipper tape. Right. So that is now pinned in place. So I can now undo my zipper tape and pull the pull all the way down the bottom. Right, so same process again. We're going to pop this underneath, but we're starting at the top of the zipper now. Move my pin out of the way. Okay. Nearly there. So I'm trying not to get my hands in the way. It's quite a challenge, you know, to sew at an angle and not get your hands in the way. It's a skill. It's a skill set anybody knew, right? I know you can't see what I'm doing, but I am tweaking. Come on, round we go. Okay, come on, do what you're told. Right, if you're really struggling, you can lift the needle out. There we go. It's getting it around the needle that's the tricky part, especially on these because they're so close. Put my foot back down. Right, I'm just going to do a couple of back stitches because I've created a loop of thread where I pulled the needle out. Right, there we go. Right, our zip, ladies and gentlemen, is in. So I'm going to open this up nice and wide. I'm not going to burn myself on the iron. And do my zip up. And if you want to have a look, that is an invisible zip. So the whole concept of an invisible zip is you cannot see it at the end. If you use a normal zip, then you'll be able to see the teeth. But again, it doesn't matter. A normal zip is slightly easier to put in. So really go on what you want to do. The only thing you can see is this little pull. Okay, so I'm going to keep my cushion cover closed just for a minute. And what I need to do is just stitch here and here, just to create these corners. So I'm going to do that first. So my zip's sort of in the way, but what I want to do is kind of follow this line of stitching, just catch the end so that the end of my zip is hidden inside. So I'm going to kind of come from about here, if that makes sense. Shall I get I've got a fabric pen here. So that's where the stitching on my zip ends. If Andrew can zoom right in. Okay, so the stitching on my zip ends here. So that's the end of my zip is there. I'm going to stitch from about here. So that's just under an inch, I'd say. There. So I'm going to basically come just inside that line of stitching up to this corner and just do a pivot and just do about an inch of stitching to there. Okay, and I'm going to do that on both corners. That's going to give my zip just a little bit of a corner, a place to sit. And I need to change. Am I going to change my foot? Let me think about this for a minute. You know what? I'm not going to change my foot because only for this bit. I will change it in a second, but this way I can get nice and close to the original line of stitching that I did. So piping feet has a lot of uses other than just for piping. Okay. Yeah, so nice and close up to the zip, which I can get to because I've got this foot on. And then pivot in the corner and just about an inch just to create a corner, because it's very hard to start in a corner. You never ever want to start in a corner. If you notice when we're sewing around these cushions, we start along a long edge and then pivot in all the corners. Never stop in a corner because you're going to A, weaken that corner, and B, it's really hard to get a decent point to that corner if you're not if you stop there. Right, I'm going to do the same on this other side. So I will show you up close what I'm doing, but what I've just the marks I just made, I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side, but I've pushed the pull out of the way so that, because it's too bulky, you just can't get the needle near the zipper tape. It just doesn't work. And you're likely to then slip and hit the pull, and then you've got a broken needle. Which isn't the end of the world, but if we can avoid it. Right, so if I open this out now, I know I've created a corner. Can you see what we've done? So now the zip kind of disappears into that seam. And it's the same on this side. I'll show you where I've stitched. So I started here, inside the line of the stitching to the corner, and then if I turn it through, you can see that the zip disappears into the seam. Okay, so that's how we're going to get a really nice neat edge. If you use a zipper that goes the full width of your cushion all the way across, then what you don't necessarily need to do that stage. You can just stitch straight up the sides. So again, completely up to you. Right, now before we stitch this together, very important, undo your zip, because if you don't, you are not going to get this turned through. Right, let's quickly change the foot, because you cannot undo a zip from the inside. Can't be done. It's a pain. There's basically zips have a locking mechanism built into them, where if the pull is down, it kind of locks in place. Which is why if you have like jeans flies or trouser flies or anything that kind of keeps slipping open, quite often it can just be that if you drop the pull down, so you do your fly up and then drop the pull down, it will lock in place. Sometimes it means the pull has broken, but invariably there is an inbuilt locking system. Right, here we go. All the way around, exactly the same as we did before, but my zip is open, remember that. There we go. So again, pin it, clip it, however you want to do it. Just for speed purposes, I'm just going rogue and just stitching around. But I trust the product, to be honest. You can kind of do these things when you're dealing with quality materials. So it's not slipping and sliding. I know that, you know, it's cut properly. Right, so now, see what I mean? If that was all done up, there's no way you can get that open. So I've got my gap. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did before to turn my corners. You've seen me do this quite a few times now. So get quite excited by a zip one. I think the zip ones are my favourite. Once you kind of get your head around doing them. There we go. Cushion front. Butterflies at the top. Cushion back. And there is our invisible zip fastening. There we go. 2 out of 3. Right, I think we're probably going to go past the hour. I do apologise, but I want to make sure you see all 3 options. So do not panic. If you need to sort of go off, if you've got other things to be doing, we're going to email you the link to it anyway. So do not panic. Right, so I'm going to be using the butterflies and poppies for the next one. So this is going to be the button fastening. So front, exactly the same. There's my front. This is my bottom. This is my top. Now I've cut 2 pieces. Now this is a little bit more complicated. I'm going to give you the dimensions of what the pieces I've cut. Because what we need to do is create a big turner under, but enough that they overlap in the middle. Okay, so I've written the measurements on the back of each of these pieces of fabric because I'm rubbish at remembering numbers. So for the side that we're going to put the buttonholes on, I've done a 10 inches by 17.5. So the width is the same, but that measurement there is 10 inches. I hope I've done my maths right. This could all go wrong. This one is, again, 17.5 inches by 11.5 inches. Okay, so we've got an extra 1.5 inches on this side. Now the process is exactly the same for both of them. So I'm going to do that process first, and then we're going to do buttonholes and then buttons. Okay, so again, I want to make sure, so which way up do we want? Let's have a look. I'm going to go horizontal again. So this is the side, the wider side is the side that you put the buttons on. So that's going to be the one that goes underneath. So I'm going to put that at the bottom, and I'm going to have it so that my butterflies are flying that way. So I want to make sure my top piece is in the same direction. I have not pattern matched this. I'm not even going to attempt it because this one involved maths. And yeah, so what we want to do is turn up about 1/4 inch here, like so. I'll tell you what, let's move those out of the way so that you're not getting confused. So we're going to turn this up 1/4 inch, and I am going to press this. I'm going to do this on both pieces, so exactly the same process. So I'll show you this up close. This pen I'm using, by the way, disappears with heat. So it also rubs out. There's an eraser on the bottom of it, and it rubs out as well. It's brilliant. It's one of my favourite gadgets. But yeah, just be careful if you are writing on fabric. If you then accidentally, there you go, see, it's gone. If you accidentally then go and touch it with the iron, it's gone. Lose your measurements. Yeah, don't do that. Right. Look how well loved my tape measure is. I keep thinking I should get a new one, but this is just so well loved. I just think sewing kits improve with use. It's like a fine wine or a cheese. Right, so I'm going to turn these down 1 1/4 inch. So what we've done is it's 1.5 inches in total that we've turned up. But the buttons I'm using are inch buttons, so I just want it slightly bigger than the buttons. So I'm going for 1.25 inches. Give that a press. Oh, use the inch side, Becky. There we go. Does anyone else talk to themselves while they're sewing? I always think it's sensible conversation though, isn't it? You're always going, you know. Yeah, exactly. If you want people to understand your own point of view, talking to yourself is the best way of doing it. Because you're always right, aren't you? No one's going to argue. Right, so that's turning that one. I'm going to bring in my other piece and do exactly the same thing. Okay, so just about 1/4 inch first. Like so. And then the 1.25 inch again. Talking about old kits, because I've got my grandmother's old tobacco tin that she used to keep pins in, and that's what I keep my pins in. And I've got my other grandmother's button tin. That was the one thing that I wanted when she died, was her button tin. And it's amazing because I used to spend hours playing with her button tin when I was a kid. It's one of those things, you open it up and the smell is, I'm instantly like 7 again, sat at her dining room table counting buttons. Very, very, I love it. There's so, and you know, sewing kits and things. I think I've got my great-great-grandmother's darning mushroom. You know, these things don't age. They just live forever. Right, so I've done that. Now I'm just going to check if I overlap these. Okay, so I've done the same overlap on them both, so I can just line them up like that. I'm just going to line my cushion over the top and make sure. Okay, so I've made it, I think we're about 1/4 inch at the top and the bottom out. I'm not too worried. I'm just going to stitch around that because we're not going to lose any pattern because it's all white. Okay, I'm showing the techniques. Maths is not my strong point. Right, so now I'm going to just do a quick edge stitch along here like we did with that roll hem, but just along these two edges, okay? So exactly like we did with the envelope fold. In fact, the process for these two parts of the cushion back, for this cushion, are exactly the same. It's just that the turn up is bigger. We're not doing just a quick 1/4 inch roll hem. This is a deliberately measured. So I said there was a time to be precise. This is one of those times. go. So there's one. Bring in the other one. Whoop. Now, if you are going to do any surface embroidery to these, so the cushions behind me have all got a bit of free motion in them that were all kind of done in the show, or were on the show when we launched these. And I did a lot of demonstrations on free motion sewing as well. And so if you want to do any of that kind of surface decoration first, or any hand embroidery, do that before you put the back on. So do it when your front is just your piece of fabric, because trust me, it'll make it a lot easier. Right, so which side is this is the buttonhole side, so that's going to be on the top, like that. Didn't pattern match this one, never mind. Ruined, Andrew says. Come on then, Andrew, you come and take over. Oh, he reckons he could. This is true. He watches so many people crafting. He's an expert. Yeah, I think we should put him to the test. What do you reckon? Come down and finish my demonstration, Andrew. Right, Andrew, do some maths for me. What's half of 17 and a half? 8 3/4? Get me doing maths. Right, so I'm just going to put a little mark at 8 3/4 inches with my heat erasable pen. And that's the middle. So I'm going to do 5 buttonholes. So I want my first buttonhole to be smack bang in the middle. Now I'm going to, so 8 3/4. Do you know what I'm going to do? To save time, I'm going to grab one I did earlier and I'm going to measure the distance that I did on these. So this is the back. Wait for Andrew to catch up. There you go. So there you go, there's the button. So this is what we're doing. So I'm going to measure the distance between these buttonholes that I did. They are 2 3/4 by the looks of it. So, or 3 inches. 3 inches? Maybe 3 inches. So yeah, so work out how far apart you want your buttons, but I've done these 3 inches apart. There we go. So, right, so I'm going to mark 3 inches and then 6 inches. So then that leaves about 3 inches from the end, which is perfect. So if you're going to copy this, you know, perfectly as I'm doing it, 3 inches apart works well. So now I've got my positions of my buttonholes. Okay, I'm just going to take them longer, and I'm going to mark the point. I don't know if Andrew can zoom in a little bit and then you'll be able to see. So I want my buttonhole to start about there. Can you see I've kind of made that little T shape? So that's about 1/4 inch. So we want our buttonholes to be uniform and we don't want them to be too close to the edge. So I've kind of marked those with a T. Now, always do your buttonholes first. This is my biggest tip. Always do your buttonholes first and your buttons later, because it's impossible to move a buttonhole and it's very easy to move a button. So I've gone for this blue because it picks out the blue of the forget-me-nots. I thought it was quite sweet, and there's blue in the butterflies as well. So I'm going to get my A foot out, which is this big beast, and in the back there is a concertina. And I'm going to slide my button into the concertina like so. And that's created a gap here, and that tells the machine how big I need my buttonhole. So, ooh, slipped straight, sliding straight down the other side. On we go. I'm going to lower down my buttonhole lever. So if you're using a Brother machine, there's a buttonhole lever just here that, oh, hang on. I don't know if Andrew's going to try and catch that. So he'll get there, he'll get there. Patience, people. Oh, there's one. You can see this right here anyway, where my finger is. There we are. This is the buttonhole lever. So it pops down from the top. Make sure you have that down. If you select a buttonhole stitch, it will not work. The buttonhole will not sew until that is down. The same as a non-buttonhole stitch won't stitch while that is down. So There you go. Right, I'm going to quickly choose a buttonhole. So I'm just going to go for a rectangular buttonhole, nothing fancy, and we're good to go. So I'm going to pop the foot. So that T that I've marked, I'm lining it up. I've lined up that T. You'll never see it from where you are because you've got to be right from my angle. But there's a red cross marked on the foot that I've just lined up that T with. And I'm going to press go. And it's going to stitch me a perfect size buttonhole. So you want your buttonhole, you want your turnover to be slightly bigger than the buttonhole you're stitching. So these are ending right on the seam bit here. So this was really close. I thought I'd worked this out perfectly, but I think I could have done with an extra 1/4 inch. So again, test out your buttonholes before you stitch them, because it can be, like I said, if they go wrong, it's very, very hard, especially once they're cut, it's impossible. You've then got to do some darning to close them again. But the reason why I've done this big turnover is A, aesthetically, it looks nice, but also it's giving a bit of strength to these buttonholes. We've got 2 layers of this lovely thick cotton here supporting these buttonholes. There we go. Number 3. I always find things like buttonholes, they take a little bit of faffing around to get them right, to get them in the, find out the measurements and positioning and everything else and setting it all up with the foot. But actually, once you've done that, it's such an easy process. Look, we've done 3 already in what? About 30 seconds. So I've got a knee lift on this machine. If you can hear that noise, the knee lift is what lifts the foot up and down. As soon as I had a machine with a knee lift, it's a bit like, it's actually echoes from from industrial machines. But it means that you can just do these things without having to use your hands. There we go. But especially for this, where you're sort of trying to position. Right, last one. There we go, nearly there, just down the other end. Doing the bar tack at the end. Done. Get that out of the machine, I'll show you. So if you have a close-up look, you can see, again, it's white on white. But we've got all of our buttonholes. Okay, spot on. So buttonholes done. Now where's my stitch ripper? Let's grab my stitch ripper. So we've had a question, was I moving the fabric or guiding it? I was just keeping an eye on it, basically. The machine was pushing it through. So that little lever that I said about, I don't know if Andrew can have a look at the lever again. So that lever, can you remember I said the button in the back opened up this gap here? And what happens is when hang on, let's lift the foot up so I can move it. Can you see that button lever hits those parts? So as soon as the button lever is hit by either of those little pieces of plastic on the foot, it tells the machine to start reverse stitching or or forward stitching. So the machine will go backwards and forwards to create the stitch. Andrew, is that your question, Andrew? Andrew's asked if it automatically does it decide. So if you want to have a look at have a close-up look at the buttonhole that I've just done, can you see this is the red line that I drew. This is the red line that I drew across the top. So you can see that it's gone either side of the red line. If I turn it over, you can see it a bit more clearly that there is a gap. So it will automatically leave that gap for you to open your buttonhole. Now, what you want, tips for opening your buttonhole, you want a stitch ripper. You want to come in to the top of your buttonhole, just inside your bar tack, and very carefully, because you don't want to catch any of your stitches, slice through the layers of fabric to the middle. Don't go any further than the middle. Then we're going to turn it around, insert your stitch ripper at the other end and meet it in the middle. And that will open up your buttonhole. What you don't want to do is to start here and just shoot off, because what you can end up doing, especially not so much with this fabric because it's quite thick, so it takes a bit of effort to get it through. But if your fabric's thinner, you can just it will just go. And if you go straight through your bar tack at the end and you've ended up slicing your fabric, so you've ruined your buttonhole and your fabric, nobody wants to do that. So slow and steady wins the race with these. Am I still all right for time, Andrew? I think we're way over. Oh, I'm cutting into his lunch break. Interfering with his sandwich eating. Right. Oh, nearly there. Right, we're on number 4. Last one. There we go. And come on, stitch ripper. Through the hole. Done. So there's all our 5 buttonholes. Now the reason I've opened them before I've done anything else is, let's move our buttons out of the way. Now I'm going to bring in my other piece. I'm going to line these over, line them up. Like so. I'm going to get my pen and I'm going to do a little line in every buttonhole. This is why you do the buttonholes first and then the buttons, because look, this is where I put my buttons on. That was less dramatic than I hoped it would be, because you can't really see because it's red on against a red pattern. But I've now marked exactly where my buttons need to go. And remember, this pen erases very quickly and easily, so it doesn't matter what I draw on my fabric, it will go. Right, so now I'm going to stitch some buttons. Now the button foot on this machine is slightly different to the one on the FS 180 and 250, but the process is exactly the same. So if you have one of the other machines, oh, come on. Right, if you have one of the other machines, the foot that you have will, actually, I'll tell you what, most people are going to have that foot. I do have that foot with me. So let's find that and then you can see exactly what I'm talking about. We'll use this one. This is the foot that comes with your 180 or your 250. So you'll probably be familiar with it. It's marked as the M foot, I believe, on the brother thing, although your machine will never say put the M foot on. I don't think. I've never seen it. Basically, this is your button putting foot. So there's a rubber bit at the bottom there. So I'm going to stick that on. You clipped in? No. I'm catching the thread. That's not good. Don't want to do that. It's the only trouble with this one. This foot is so fiddly. There we go. Right. So I've lifted out my buttonhole lever thing. Right, I'm going to select just a standard zigzag, nothing fancy about the zigzag, but I'm going to go into my, you know, how you adjust your widths and your lengths. I'm going to leave the width at 3.5 because that's usually the standard width of a buttonhole, but you can adjust that. I'm going to change the length and I'm going to change it to 0 because I don't want my stitch going anywhere. The other way you can do this is to drop your feed dogs. It will do the same thing, but this way the feed dogs aren't going to feed it anyway. So I'm going to pop my fabric underneath with the button on the top. So I'm going to position the button on the fabric before, let's lengthen that line so it's a bit easier to see. So I'm drawing the lines all the way to the edge because once I put the button on I can't see the line anymore, so I've extended the lines past the button. Right, so I'm going to just position my button in the centre of my turn up. So there's my seam, there's my edge, so in the middle of these two, in line with that line that I've drawn, I'm going to kind of hold it in place and clamp it in place with the button foot, sorry. So those rubber bits are basically clamping my button in place. Now these buttons have got 4 holes, which is a little bit of a pain because it means you've got to do this twice per button. But I'm just using the flywheel on the side of the machine, always turning it towards you, never turning it away. And I'm just going to do a couple of stitches just to make sure that my needle isn't going to hit the button. If you've got it on a 3.5 width zigzag, it should be okay, but it's always good to check. And I'm just going to do a few stitches. It's not moving anywhere, it's just jumping from hole to hole. And then I'm going to do it the other way. Move the button to do the other 2 holes. Sorry, Andrew, what was your question? If I twist it away from me, I don't really understand the question. Oh, the wheel on the side, sorry. Yeah, so Andrew's question is what happens if you turn the wheel away from you, not towards you? I was getting confused because I thought he was talking about the button. It's easily done. The reason why you turn it away towards you is because then you're turning it in the direction of the mechanism. If you turn it the other way, it's going against the mechanism. You can damage your machine. Nobody wants that. Right, button 1. Hang on, let's just show you button 1. Okay, so there's button 1 on. So all I've done is a zigzag stitch of 0 length, 3.5 width in those 2 holes, and then moved it slightly and done the same thing there. So we just need to do that a few more times. Again, this is one of those things, once you've kind of got it set up and going, it doesn't take long at all. And the day I discovered my sewing machine could sew buttons on for me, I was a very happy person. It made me very happy because I love a bit of hand sewing if I don't have to do it. The minute I have to do it, I instantly don't want to do it. And that's a bit of a problem when you're finishing off projects. You have to do those last little bits by hand, and I'm like, I don't want to. Don't make me do it. Yeah, I'll sit and embroider and do cross stitch and embroidery for hours. I'm currently making some doll's house carpets, 1/12 scale carpets for my doll's house. And I'm embroidering onto 28 count open weave linen. And it's taking, if you know embroidery, that's small. It's taking me months to do this carpet because I've decided to do a massive carpet to go in the dining room in this doll's house. Why? Why did I start it? But I'll sit and do that for absolutely hours. But tell me I have to sew on a button. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So I'm a strange being. I don't think I'm the only one. I think there are other people out there like me. But anyway, back to the point is, your sewing machine will stitch buttons on for you and it's amazing. You can do 5 buttons in about 3 minutes instead of 15 minutes. Number 4, last one. Dun, dun, dun. Come on then, line you up. Oh, no, a bit too close. So I'm not cutting the thread in between moving from the front holes to the back holes or whichever way around you're doing it. I'm just moving the button. It just gives like that little extra stitch is one little extra bit of strength then. Let's cut off my ends. And there we have 5 perfectly stitched buttons. All in the right place because we marked it with our buttonholes. So now I'm going to bring in my buttonhole side and I'm just going to pop the buttons through each of the buttonholes. Andrew is doubting my my skills. It would be embarrassing, you're absolutely right, it would be very embarrassing if it didn't work, but I'm a professional, Andrew, it's fine. There we go. Right, there we go, there's our button back. So now the next thing to do is to stitch it onto the front. So I'm going to turn it round so this is the way I want it. I want my butterflies to be going that way. I'm going to lay my front over the top. Now remember I said we were out by about half an inch or so. So I'm going to turn it around this way and follow this side of the fabric when I'm stitching rather than the other side, because then I know I'm going to be catching it in. I might even trim it off, to be honest, but it's only white fabric, so you're not losing anything. Any more questions, or am I just explaining it so well that you're all... Right, okay, so was it Julie, did you say? Okay, Julie has asked a question about the hummingbird backpack at the back. So that is the Bella backpack from the Bags Boutique pattern select kit, utilising the hummingbird front and also some of the hummingbird fabric, the meter pieces, because there's not quite enough in the panels to do a bag like that. And I've also used the olive green plain that was launched in conjunction with the Nature's Veil range. Can we do a workshop on how to make that bag? Well, you'll have to ask Stephanie that question. I don't get to make those kinds of decisions. She's the big boss lady. I'll ask her. I will ask her. Sorry? All right, we will put the question in, don't worry. Right, so I've just trimmed those edges away to make it less confusing, and I've clipped all the way around. And now again, I'm just going to stitch all the way around. I don't need to worry too much about having these buttons open because you can open a button from the other side. Oh, what we do need to do is not have the button, the button foot on there anymore. Put just the generic button, generic foot, and select straight stitch. There we go, all the way round, and we will have done 3 whole cushions. I think we should be proud of ourselves. We've achieved something today. Again, the same as you did with the envelope fold, where it crosses over, I'm just going to go over that 2 or 3 times for strength. Last bit. Oh, thanks, Carol. Apparently I've been explaining everything beautifully. Well, you might, yeah. Thank you, Carol. I'll pay you later. Right, there we go. Oh. Machine made a clunk and now I've gone wonky because I got concerned about the clunk. At least you know we're live. And oh, last edge, meeting up where we started. As I said, always start along a straight edge, never start in a corner. All the way around, take it out. All right, undo your buttons so you can turn it through. I'm not going to undo them all, 3 will be plenty. Do our little corner foldy thing that we've seen already 8 times before. See, that's the beauty with these things. Although I'm doing different techniques, essentially, there's not a huge amount of difference between them. So it's quite easy. If you're like, well, I've just started out, I'm going to try the envelope fold. Actually, all you need to do the button one is a little bit of maths acumen, you know, and it's essentially the same. Again, straighten out your bits at the back. I haven't cut off any of my threads. Naughty. Do up your buttonholes. Obviously you'd give all of these a quick press, like a good press before putting your cushions in them once you've finished. But I didn't hear any of that, Andrew, just so you know. Oh, interesting. Piping foot. Okay, let me just finish this and then I'll get it out and have a look. So I've realised I was too busy talking and I've stitched it so that the butterfly's there. So actually my buttons run down my cushion. Never mind, never mind. To be fair, that doesn't matter. It depends. And also you could have it that way or that way and it still looks right. There's not a huge directional thing with this one on the front, and on any of them really, apart from the hummingbird, obviously. Don't want hummingbird stood on his head. But there you go, there's that. And there's your buttons on the back. So 3 cushions, so that's your buttons. We did, that my zip is so good, I can't tell which side had the zip in. The invisible zipper, and then with the one we started with, which was the beautifully pattern matched by Pure Fluke envelope fold. Done! Congratulations, we got through it. Right. Oh, Andrew thinks he's found your piping foot. My piping foot. It's not my piping foot. Right, so if I hold it and you can zoom in on it maybe. I don't know if that would help, Andrew. Is he going to zoom in? He's zooming in. Yeah. Okay, so am I allowed to say that? Okay, on Amazon, apparently on Amazon, he thinks he's found it, Andrew thinks he's found it for $16.95, which is about right. I would have said it's about that sort of price range. Yeah, so he'll put a link in the chat for you if you want to get hold of it. But it basically has a screw here, which means that you can, so this is the part that fits onto the shank of your machine. And then you can adjust the position of it depending on what side of your zipper you're stitching. So it's a really, or your piping, sorry, because obviously your piping, you run your piping along here, it gives you really lovely tight piping. So I thoroughly recommend having this one in your kit if you haven't already. So, oh, there's only 3 left in stock on Amazon apparently, so. Oh, right, speaking of deals, we have one here at Highlight Crafts for you. Right, I'm going to read this to you. A free neutral meter with every order that includes a pre-printed cushion panel on the Highlight Crafts website. So am I thinking this right, Andrew? So if they were to go and buy, for example, the hummingbird cushion that we've just done, they will get a meter of neutral fabric for free, automatically added. Do they get to choose the colour? Oh, right. Oh, right. Oh, okay. So there's no, it's a very, very neutral. So it goes with everything. Perfect. Excellent. Right. Well, there you go. That's pretty cool. Finishes on the 12th of February at midnight. There you are. Excellent. Smooth. So there we go. Have we got any other questions to finish off with? Oh, I'm glad everyone's enjoyed it. That's been marvellous. I've had a great time. I've loved it. But yeah, I'm on social media anyway, under Becky Cole Sews. If you want to find me and if you've got any questions anyway, that's absolutely fine. Or you can contact the guys here at Highlight Crafts. They're all lovely. But that's me. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. I hope you'd enjoyed it. I've had a great time. Enjoy your cushion making. See you later.